The scream tore through the silence of the first-class cabin. 17-year-old Maya Sterling sat frozen, tears streaming down her face as the cold metal of handcuffs bit into her wrists. The flight attendant loomed over her, a triumphant sneer on her face, convinced she had just caught a criminal. The other passengers whispered, phones recording, judging the girl in the hoodie who clearly didn't belong. But they didn't know who was about to walk through that cabin door. They didn't know that the man boarding late wasn't just a passenger, and when he saw his daughter in chains, the career of every crew member on that flight was going to end in ashes. This is the story of Flight 402 and the mistake that cost an airline millions. The air inside the terminal at JFK was thick with the smell of expensive coffee and the frenetic energy of holiday travel. But inside the exclusive lounge for Zenith Airways, the atmosphere was a hushed, sterile calm. Maya Sterling adjusted her oversized vintage hoodie, pulling the sleeves down over her hands. She shifted in the leather armchair, feeling the familiar, prickly heat of anxiety. She was 17, with voluminous curls pulled back into a messy bun and a pair of beat-up noise-cancelling headphones around her neck. To the untrained eye, she looked like a kid who had wandered away from a school trip. To the trained eye, however, the details were there. The headphones were limited edition Sennheisers. The hoodie was archival Helmut Lang. The scuffed sneakers on her feet cost more than most people's monthly rent. But Stephanie Vance, the senior flight attendant currently scanning the manifest at the gate desk, didn't have a trained eye. She had a prejudiced one. Maya checked her phone. "Running late, bored without me. I'll make the gate just before closure. Love you, Dad." She sighed. Her father, David Sterling, was always running late. It was the curse of being a man who didn't just climb the corporate ladder, but built the entire building. Maya picked up her backpack and walked toward the gate agent. "First-class boarding," the agent announced. Maya stepped forward, holding out her phone with the QR code. The scanner beeped green. "Welcome aboard, Miss Sterling," the agent said, with a polite, if slightly confused, smile. Maya walked down the jet bridge, the cool air hitting her face. She loved flying. It was the only time the world felt quiet. She stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the first-class cabin. It was a wide-body jet, the pride of the Zenith fleet, fitted with enclosed suites rather than just seats. She found Suite 1A. It was spacious, with a lie-flat bed, a massive screen, and a sliding privacy door. She tossed her backpack into the overhead bin and settled into the seat, immediately pulling out her sketchbook. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, like breaking glass. Maya looked up. Standing in the aisle was a flight attendant. Her name tag read Stephanie. She was tall, with hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde rigidity, and a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "Yes?" Maya asked. "I think you're lost, sweetie," Stephanie said, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Economy's back that way. Row 10 starts the main cabin." "I know," Maya said softly. "I'm in seat 1A. Stephanie's eyebrows shot up. She let out a short, incredulous huff of air. "Let me see your boarding pass." Maya unlocked her phone and held it up. Stephanie snatched the phone from her hand, her nails clicking against the screen. She stared at it, scrolling up and down, then looked back at Maya. "Screenshots can be faked," Stephanie muttered, mostly to herself, but loud enough for Maya to hear. She handed the phone back with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Wait here." Stephanie marched to the front galley. Maya could see her talking to another flight attendant, a younger man named Kyle. Stephanie was gesturing wildly toward Maya's seat. Kyle looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Maya, then looked down at his shoes. Maya felt her stomach twist. She knew this routine. She had lived this routine in luxury boutiques, in hotel lobbies, and even in the lobby of her own apartment building. "You don't look like you belong." Stephanie returned, but she wasn't holding a manifest. She was holding a sense of authority that she wore like armor. "I've checked the system," Stephanie lied. "There's a glitch. Seat 1A is reserved for a VIP, a high-priority status member. You're going to have to move." "My name is on the ticket," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly but holding firm. "Maya Sterling." "Look," Stephanie snapped, dropping the sweet act. "I don't know how you got that pass. Maybe you used your parents' miles, or maybe you hacked the app. I don't care. But we have a full flight, and I have a paying customer who actually needs this seat. I'm moving you to 34B. Take your bag and go." "No," Maya said. The cabin went silent. A businessman in 2B lowered his newspaper. A woman in 1D peered over her glasses. "Excuse me?" Stephanie's face flushed a blotchy red. "I paid for this seat," Maya said, her hands gripping her sketchbook tight. "I'm not moving." Stephanie leaned in, invading Maya's personal space. "Listen to me, you little brat. You are disrupting this flight. If you don't move, I will have you removed. Do you understand?" "I'm waiting for my father," Maya whispered. "Oh, I'm sure you are," Stephanie scoffed. "Is he in economy, or did he miss the flight? I don't have time for imaginary parents. Last chance." Maya didn't move. She put her headphones back on, a silent act of defiance that she knew would set Stephanie off. It did. Stephanie stormed to the cockpit door and pounded on it. The door cracked open, and the first officer, a man named Pilot Graves, poked his head out. "Problem, Stephanie?" "We have a squatter in 1A, Stephanie hissed. "Refuses to move. Belligerent. She pushed me." Maya's eyes widened. She hadn't touched her. She hadn't even stood up. "She pushed you?" Graves asked, his face hardening. "Shoved my arm when I asked for her ticket," Stephanie lied effortlessly. "She's a security risk, Paul. She's acting erratic. I think she's on something." Graves stepped out of the cockpit. He was a large man, imposing, with the kind of authority that usually quelled disputes instantly. He walked over to Suite 1A. "Miss," Graves barked. "Get up." Maya pulled her headphones down. "She's lying. I didn't touch her. I have a ticket." "I don't care about your ticket anymore," Graves said. "You assaulted a crew member. That's a federal offense. You are off this plane." "I'm not getting off," Maya cried out, panic finally setting in. "My dad is coming. Please just check the manifest properly." "Grab her bag, Kyle," Stephanie ordered. The younger flight attendant, Kyle, hesitated. "Stephanie, maybe we should just double-check the gate agent." "Do it!" Stephanie screamed. Kyle flinched and grabbed Maya's backpack from the bin. "Hey, don't touch my stuff!" Maya stood up, reaching for her bag. "She's attacking!" Stephanie yelled, seizing the moment. She lunged forward, grabbing Maya's wrist and twisting it behind her back. "Ow! You're hurting me!" Maya screamed. "Restrain her," Graves ordered. From the storage locker, Stephanie pulled out a pair of zip-tie flex cuffs, the heavy-duty plastic restraints used for unruly passengers. "Turn around!" Stephanie shouted, shoving Maya face first into the partition wall of the suite. "Please, stop! I have a ticket!" Maya was sobbing now, the humiliation burning hotter than the pain in her shoulder. The passengers watched. Some looked horrified, others looked annoyed at the delay. One woman, a socialite in 2A named Mrs. Gable, pulled out her phone. "This is unnecessary," Mrs. Gable said, recording. "She's just a child." "Put that phone away or you're next," Stephanie threatened, her power trip spiraling out of control. She cinched the flex cuffs tight around Maya's wrists. Too tight. The plastic dug into Maya's skin, cutting off circulation. They shoved Maya back down into the seat of 1A, not to let her fly, but to hold her there until airport security could board to arrest her. "You sit there and you shut up!" Stephanie spat, breathless from the exertion. She smoothed her uniform, looking around the cabin as if she expected applause. "We don't tolerate violence on Zenith Airways." Maya curled into a ball, her forehead pressed against the cool window, tears dripping onto her leather hoodie. She felt small. She felt powerless. It didn't matter who she was or what she owned. In this metal tube, she was just a target. "Captain," Stephanie said, turning to the pilot, "we should close the doors. Security can meet us at the destination. I don't want to delay takeoff any longer. We're already 10 minutes behind." "Agreed," Graves said. "Keep an eye on her. If she moves, sedate her if you have to." The pilot returned to the cockpit. Stephanie stood guard at the front of the aisle, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text. "Got the seat. He's going to love one lay. Sneak him up once we're airborne." This was the plan. Stephanie had a boyfriend flying standby in economy. She wanted him in first class. She needed 1A empty. She had manufactured a crisis to get what she wanted, banking on the assumption that a young black girl in a hoodie would have zero credibility against a senior flight attendant. The cabin doors began to close. The heavy thud of the locking mechanism echoed through the plane. Maya closed her eyes, praying for her father. But the doors were closing. He had missed the flight. She was alone. Suddenly, a heavy banging resonated from the outside of the main cabin door just as the seal was pressurizing. Thud, thud, thud. Stephanie frowned. "Who is that? We're closed." The banging continued, urgent and authoritative. The gate agent on the other side engaged the bridge override. The hydraulic hiss sounded, and the main cabin door slowly reopened. Stephanie marched to the entryway, ready to scream at whatever late passenger or ground crew dared to delay her flight. "We are closed," Stephanie yelled as the gap widened. "You cannot board! Get back!" A hand shot through the gap, gripping the frame of the door. It was a hand wearing a platinum Patek Philippe watch. The door swung fully open. Standing there was a man in a bespoke charcoal suit. He was 6'3", with broad shoulders and a presence that sucked the oxygen out of the room. He was out of breath, his tie slightly askew from running, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the interior of the plane with the intensity of a predator. David Sterling had arrived, and he wasn't smiling. "I believe," David said, his voice deep and resonating with a terrifying calmness, "you are holding my daughter." Stephanie froze. She looked at the man, then back at the girl in handcuffs, then back at the man. The resemblance was undeniable, but more than the resemblance, she recognized the face. Not from the news, but from the internal company memo sent out 3 days ago. The memo regarding the acquisition of Zenith Airways by the private equity firm Sterling and Co. The memo that included a picture of the new chairman of the board. David Sterling stepped onto the plane. He didn't look at Stephanie. He looked past her, straight to seat 1A, where Maya was weeping, her hands bound behind her back. The color drained from Stephanie's face so fast she looked like a corpse. "Maya!" David's voice broke, shifting from command to horror. He rushed past Stephanie, dropping his briefcase in the aisle. He knelt beside seat 1A. "Maya? Baby? What happened?" "Daddy," Maya choked out. They said I stole the ticket. They cuffed me." David looked at the plastic restraints, digging into his daughter's wrists. His jaw tightened, the muscles bunching. He slowly stood up and turned around. The entire first-class cabin held its breath. David looked at Stephanie. It wasn't a look of anger. It was something far worse. It was the look of a man who had the power to destroy worlds, deciding exactly how he was going to dismantle hers. "Who?" David asked, his voice barely a whisper. did this. Stephanie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes an explosion. David Sterling stood to his full height, his back to his weeping daughter. He looked at Stephanie, who was trembling in her immaculate Zenith Airways uniform. He looked at Captain Paul Graves, who had emerged from the cockpit again, looking annoyed until he saw the suit, the watch, and the sheer fury radiating off the man standing in the aisle. "I asked a question," David said, his voice terrifyingly level. "Who put these on her?" Stephanie swallowed hard. She tried to summon the arrogance she had displayed only minutes ago, but it flickered and died in the face of this man's presence. "Sir, you need to return to the gate area. You are violating federal aviation regulations by forcing entry onto—" "I am asking you one last time," David interrupted, stepping closer. He didn't shout. He enunciated every syllable with surgical precision. "Who? Cuffed? My daughter?" Stephanie pointed a shaking finger at Maya. She was belligerent. She refused to vacate a seat that wasn't hers. She assaulted me." "Assaulted you?" David repeated. He looked at Stephanie's arms, her face, her uniform, not a hair out of place. He then looked at Maya, curled in a ball, hyperventilating, red marks forming around her wrists where the plastic cut into her skin. "She pushed me," Stephanie lied, though her voice wavered. "Captain Graves ordered the restraint. I just followed protocol." David turned his gaze to the pilot. Graves puffed out his chest, trying to assert authority. "Look, buddy," Graves said, stepping forward. "I don't know who you think you are, but once those doors close, I am the supreme authority on this vessel. Your daughter is a security threat. She's being removed. And now so are you. I'm calling the port authority." "Do it," David said. "Call them. In fact, get the FBI on the line, too. Because what is happening right now isn't just a removal. It's a kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment." "You're crazy," Graves scoffed. "Kyle, get security on the radio." "Wait." Kyle, the junior flight attendant, whispered. He was staring at David with wide, horrified eyes. He tugged on Stephanie's sleeve. "Steph, look at him." "Stop it, Kyle," she snapped. "No, Steph, look," Kyle hissed, pointing at the logo embroidered on the cuff of David's shirt, and then at the discarded briefcase on the floor. The briefcase was embossed with a gold S. "That's David Sterling." The name landed in the cabin like a grenade. Captain Graves froze. "Sterling? As in Sterling and Co.?" Mrs. Gable, the passenger in 2A, asked from behind her phone, which was still recording. "The private equity firm that just bought the majority stake in Zenith Airways on Tuesday?" Stephanie's knees buckled. She grabbed the back of seat 1B to steady herself. David ignored the gasps. He reached into his jacket pocket. Stephanie flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a pair of titanium cigar cutters. "Cut these off her," David ordered, holding the cutters out to Graves. "Now." I can't," Graves stammered. "Once restraints are applied, only law enforcement can remove them. It's liability. You talk to me about liability?" David laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "Captain, I currently own 51% of the airline you are standing in. I own the fuel in the wings. I own the seat you sleep in. And I own the pension fund you are hoping to retire on. If you do not cut these cuffs off my daughter in the next 5 seconds, I will personally ensure you never fly anything more complicated than a paper airplane for the rest of your life." Graves went pale. He snatched the cutters from David's hand. His hands shook as he knelt beside Maya. "Careful," David warned, hovering over him. "Nick her skin, and I own your house too." Snip. The plastic tie fell away. Maya gasped, rubbing her wrists. Deep, angry red grooves were etched into her dark skin. The circulation rushed back, causing her to wince in pain. David immediately crouched down, gathering her into his arms. "I've got you, May. I've got you. It's okay." Maya buried her face in her father's shoulder, sobbing. "I told them, Dad. I told them I had a ticket. She wouldn't listen. She called me a brat. She said I didn't belong." David held her tighter, his eyes closing for a moment as he absorbed her pain. When he opened them, the sadness was gone. Only cold, hard calculation remained. He stood up, helping Maya into the seat. "Sit here, sweetheart. Don't move." David turned to the cabin. He looked at the passengers. "My apologies for the delay," he said smoothly, addressing the first-class cabin as if he were addressing a board meeting. "There seems to be a significant personnel issue on this flight. I assure you, it will be resolved momentarily." He turned to Stephanie. She was pressing herself against the galley wall, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. "You said seat 1A was reserved for a VIP," David said, walking toward her. "A high-priority status member. That was the reason you tried to eject her, correct?" "Yes," Stephanie squeaked. It showed in the system. Glitch. It must have been a glitch." "Show me," David said. He pointed to the flight attendant's control tablet mounted on the wall. "Show me the manifest. Show me the glitch." Stephanie didn't move. Her eyes darted to the curtain separating first class from the galley. I can't. The system resets after door close." "You're lying," David said. He stepped past her and tapped the screen. He knew the Zenith interface better than she did. He had approved the budget for the software upgrade 3 months ago. He navigated to the seating chart. Seat 1A. Maya Sterling. Status confirmed. Fare class. Full fare first. "There is no glitch," David said, showing the screen to the passengers. "Her name is right here." I must have misread it," Stephanie stammered. "It was an honest mistake. I was stressed. The flight is overbooked." "It's not an honest mistake," Mrs. Gable chimed in from 2A. She walked straight up to the girl and told her to move to row 34. She didn't even check the iPad first. I saw it. David nodded at Mrs. Gable. "Thank you, madam." He turned back to Stephanie. "So, if 1A is booked to Maya Sterling, and you wanted it empty, why?" David's eyes narrowed. He looked around the cabin. It was full, every seat taken, except for the one Maya was in. "Captain Graves," David said without looking away from Stephanie. "How many passengers are on board?" 280, Graves answered, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Full load." "And how many non-revenue passengers? Standby staff?" I'd have to check." "Don't bother," David said. He walked to the curtain separating the galley from the cockpit. "I think I know the answer." He ripped the curtain back, hiding in the small jump seat alcove, holding a glass of pre-departure champagne that he clearly wasn't supposed to have, was a man. He was in his 30s, wearing a muscle tee and jeans, looking terrified. David looked at the man, then at Stephanie. "Who is this?" David asked. Stephanie began to cry. That's Mike." "And let me guess," David said, putting the pieces together instantly. "Mike is your boyfriend. Mike is flying on a buddy pass. But Mike doesn't want to sit in the jump seat or back in row 45. Mike wants the lie-flat bed. Mike wants the champagne. So you saw a teenage girl in a hoodie, assumed she was a nobody who used miles, and decided to bully her out of her seat so your boyfriend could live the high life." The realization hit the cabin like a shockwave. It wasn't just racism. It was theft. It was fraud. "You assaulted a minor," David said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You falsified a security threat. You delayed a transcontinental flight. And you humiliated my daughter, all to upgrade your boyfriend? I'm sorry, Stephanie wailed. Please, Mr. Sterling, I've been with Zenith for 10 years. You haven't been with Zenith for 10 minutes, David corrected. Suddenly, blue lights flashed through the cabin windows. The sirens wailed from the jet bridge. Ah, David said, adjusting his cuffs. The authorities have arrived. Finally. Captain Graves looked hopeful. Great. Police. They can sort this out. We can de-escalate. Oh no, Captain, David smiled, and it was the smile of a shark. They aren't here for me. 2 Port Authority officers and a TSA supervisor marched onto the plane. They looked ready for a fight, hands resting on their holstered weapons. The call had gone out as a Level 4 disturbance, violent passenger. Where is the subject? The lead officer, Sergeant Miller, barked, scanning the cabin. Stephanie stepped forward, wiping her tears, instantly shifting back into victim mode. It was a reflex for her. He's right there, the man in the suit, and the girl in 1A. They refused crew instructions and— Officer, David said calmly. He didn't raise his hands. He simply turned and faced them. Sergeant Miller paused. He squinted. Then his eyes widened. Mr. Sterling? Miller asked, lowering his guard. David Sterling? Hello, Sergeant Miller, David said. I believe we met at the Police Benevolent Association Gala last month. You were handling the security detail for the mayor. Yes, sir, I was, Miller said, confused. We got a call about a violent passenger attacking the crew. There has been an attack, David agreed, but not by us. David pointed at Stephanie. I want to file immediate charges against this flight attendant for assault of a minor, unlawful restraint, and attempted fraud. What? Stephanie shrieked. You can't do that. This is my aircraft. And, David continued, ignoring her, I want to file charges against him. He pointed to Mike, the boyfriend still cowering in the galley alcove with the champagne glass, for trespassing and violation of federal air carrier safety regulations. Sergeant Miller looked at Mike. Who is he? A non-ticketed passenger who was being smuggled into a revenue seat by this crew member, David explained. The TSA supervisor stepped forward. Is this true? Was he on the manifest? Captain Graves tried to interject. Look, it's a misunderstanding. Mike is— He's authorized standby. We were just finding him a seat. In seat 1A, David countered. The seat my daughter paid $4,000 for. The seat you tried to drag her out of? David turned to the sergeant. Officer, I want you to secure the flight attendant's phone, right now. My phone? Stephanie clutched her pocket. No, that's private property. Not when it contains evidence of a crime, David said. If this was a premeditated plan to steal a seat, there will be text messages. If you delete them, that is destruction of evidence. Sergeant Miller held out his hand. Ma'am, the phone. Stephanie hesitated. She looked at Mike. Mike looked at the floor. Trembling, she handed the phone over. Miller tapped the screen. It's unlocked. Top message thread. Mikey. He read aloud, his voice flat. Target located. 1A is just some kid. Gonna boot her to coach. Get ready to board. Champagne is chilling for you, baby. The cabin gasped. It was definitive. It was malicious. Read the timestamp, David commanded. 10:15 a.m., Miller read. 10 minutes before boarding. She planned it, David said, his voice cold. She didn't make a mistake. She profiled my daughter, decided she was an easy target, and planned to steal her seat before she even stepped on the plane. David turned to Captain Graves. And you, Captain? You authorized the restraints without investigating. You took the word of a flight attendant trying to score points with her boyfriend over a paying customer. You sanctioned the assault of a child. I didn't know, Graves pleaded. I swear, Mr. Sterling, I just trust my crew. Trust is earned, David said, and you just lost it. David pulled out his own phone. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. Yes, Mr. Sterling. A crisp female voice answered. It was the Chief of Operations for Zenith Airways. Margaret, David said, I'm on flight 402 at JFK. I need you to cancel the flight. Cancel it? Margaret asked. Sir, that will cost us. I don't care what it costs, David said. This crew is compromised. The pilot is negligent, and the senior flight attendant is currently being arrested for assault. I want a relief crew sent to the gate immediately for the passengers. But this plane isn't moving until these people are off it. Understood, sir. Initiating protocol now. David hung up. He looked at Stephanie. The handcuffs that were meant for Maya were now being unhooked from Sergeant Miller's belt. Stephanie Vance, Miller said, spinning her around. You are under arrest. As the metal clicked around Stephanie's wrists, the irony was thick enough to choke on. She looked at David, mascara running down her cheeks. You can't do this, she sobbed. I have a mortgage. I have a life. You should have thought about that, David said, leaning in close. Before you put your hands on my daughter. You judged her by her hoodie. You thought she was nobody. You thought she was powerless. David straightened up and addressed the whole cabin. Let this be a lesson, he said, his voice ringing out. Power isn't about what you wear. It isn't about where you sit. It's about knowing who you are. And you made the mistake of forgetting who she was. Stephanie was led off the plane in tears, followed by a handcuffed Mike. Captain Graves was told to pack his bag and leave the cockpit. He was suspended pending an investigation. The first-class cabin erupted into applause. Mrs. Gable clapped the loudest. But the drama wasn't over. As David sat back down next to Maya, checking her wrists, Maya pulled away slightly. She looked at her father, her eyes red but fierce. Dad, she whispered. Yes, honey. It's not just her, Maya said. She pointed a trembling finger at the passenger in 1D, an older man in a suit who had been quiet the whole time. When she grabbed me, when I was screaming for help, he laughed. He told me to shut up and listen to my betters. David's head snapped toward 1D. The man froze. And, Maya continued, he recorded it. He sent it to someone. I saw him typing. He said, watching a ghetto brat get taken down. Hilarious. David stared at the man in 1D. The man quickly tried to shove his phone into his jacket pocket. David stood up again. The calm CEO demeanor was slipping. The protective father was back, and he was hunting. Is that so? David walked over to seat 1D. The man, a VP of sales for a tech company named Greg Miller, swallowed hard. Now, look here, I didn't do anything illegal. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, David repeated. Indeed. David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know, Zenith Airways has a very strict policy about harassment of other passengers. It's in the fine print, Section 8, Paragraph 3. I didn't harass her, Greg protested. You laughed while a child was being assaulted, David said. And you recorded it for entertainment. That is conduct unbecoming of a Zenith passenger. David turned to the gate agent who had just boarded to handle the cancellation. Agent, what is this man's status? Mr. Miller is a platinum member, sir. Not anymore, David said. Revoke his status. Ban him from the airline. Lifetime ban. You can't do that, Greg shouted, standing up. I fly 200,000 miles a year. I'm your best customer. I don't want your money, David said dismissively. Get off my plane. This is abuse of power, Greg yelled. No, David said, turning back to his daughter. This is house cleaning. But just as the police were escorting the crew away and Greg was gathering his things in a huff, Maya grabbed her father's hand. "Dad," she said, her voice stronger now. "Wait. What is it? Don't cancel the flight." David looked at her confused. "Maya, we need to get you to a doctor. We need to process this." "No." Maya stood up. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. She looked at the other passengers, who were now facing hours of delays because of the crew swap. She looked at the economy passengers starting to grumble from the back. "If you cancel the flight," Maya said, "then Stephanie wins. She ruined everyone's day. She stopped the world because of her hate." Maya looked at her father. "I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Fashion Week. I don't want to go home and cry. I want to fly." David stared at his daughter. He saw the resilience in her eyes. It was the same resilience his wife had had. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Maya said. "But on one condition." "Anything?" Maya looked at the empty seats where the crew had been. "We need a crew. And I don't want just any crew." She looked at Kyle, the young flight attendant who had tried to stop Stephanie, who was currently giving a statement to the police, looking terrified that he was going to be fired too. "Him," Maya pointed at Kyle. "He tried to help. He was scared, but he tried. Keep him." David looked at Kyle. "What is your name, son?" "Kyle. Kyle Benson, sir." "Kyle," David said, "do you know how to work the first-class service?" "Yes, sir. I'm certified." "Good," David said. "You're the new senior purser, promoting you effectively immediately, raise included." David turned to the operations chief on the phone. "Margaret, don't cancel. Send us a reserve captain and first officer. We're flying. And upgrade Kyle Benson's pay grade to level 5. "Yes, sir." Maya sat back down in seat 1A. She looked out the window. The sun was breaking through the clouds. She rubbed her wrists. They were sore, but she wasn't broken. David sat in 1B. He reached across the aisle and took her hand. "You're a tough kid, Maya." "I'm a Sterling," she smiled weakly. But the story wasn't quite over. Because while Stephanie was in a holding cell and Greg was banned, the video Mrs. Gable took was currently uploading to Twitter, and it was about to go viral. And the internet does not forgive. The flight to Paris was smooth, but the world below was experiencing turbulence of a different kind. While Maya slept in seat 1A, finally resting after the trauma of the morning, the digital atmosphere was igniting. Mrs. Gable, the socialite in seat 2A, hadn't just recorded a short clip. She had live-streamed the entire confrontation to her 500,000 Instagram followers. By the time Flight 402 touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport 7 hours later, the video had been ripped, reposted, and retweeted millions of times. The hashtag #MarshallFlight402 was trending globally at number 1. Fire Stephanie was number 2, and Kandom Maya Sterling was number 3. David Sterling turned on his phone as the plane taxied to the gate. It buzzed incessantly for 3 solid minutes, messages from board members, PR firms, news outlets, and even a text from the governor. He ignored them all and turned to Maya. She was waking up, rubbing her eyes, her wrists still wrapped in the soft bandages Kyle, the newly promoted purser, had applied from the first aid kit. "How are you feeling?" David asked gently. "Tired," Maya said. She reached for her phone. "Don't," David warned. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because," David said, gesturing to the window. Maya looked out. Usually the tarmac was empty, save for ground crew. Today, beyond the security fence, a sea of cameras and satellite trucks was visible. "They know?" Maya asked, shrinking back into her seat. "They know everything," David said. "Mrs. Gable's video, it's everywhere." The fallout begins. While David and Maya were escorted off the plane through a private VIP exit to avoid the paparazzi, The consequences in the United States were hitting with the force of a tsunami. Greg Miller, the man in seat 1D who had laughed and recorded Maya's humiliation, landed in Paris to find his life dismantled. He turned on his phone to find 400 missed calls. He opened his email and found one that mattered, a notification from the HR department of Apex Tech Solutions. Subject: termination of employment. Effective immediately. Dear Mr. Miller, in light of the video footage currently circulating, which depicts you engaging in behavior that violates our code of conduct and core values regarding harassment and discrimination, your employment is terminated for cause. Do not come to the office. Your personal effects will be mailed to you. Greg stood in the jet bridge, staring at his phone. He had lost a $300,000 a year job because he decided to laugh at a teenager. He tried to log in to LinkedIn to do damage control, but his account had been flooded with thousands of comments. Strangers had found his old posts. They were contacting his clients. He was radioactive. Meanwhile, back in New York, Stephanie Vance was sitting in a holding cell at the JFK Port Authority precinct. She had been processed, fingerprinted, and had her mugshot taken. A photo where her mascara was smeared and her blonde hair was disheveled. Her lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Mr. Henderson, walked in. He looked tired. "Can I go?" Stephanie asked, jumping up. "This is a misunderstanding. I have a flight to work tomorrow." "You don't have a flight, Miss Vance," Henderson said, sitting down and opening a file. "Zenith Airways issued a press release 20 minutes ago." He slid a piece of paper across the metal table. Press release. Zenith Airways regarding the incident on Flight 402. We are horrified by the actions of former employee Stephanie Vance. Her employment has been terminated. Furthermore, Zenith Airways is fully cooperating with federal prosecutors regarding charges of unlawful imprisonment and assault. We are also reviewing the conduct of Captain Paul Graves. "Former," Stephanie whispered. "They can't fire me. I have a union." "The union released a statement, too," Henderson said grimly. "They are declining to represent you. They cited gross misconduct and criminal intent. You're on your own, Stephanie." "But I didn't mean to hurt her," Stephanie cried. "I was just stressed. It was a mistake." "The texts, Stephanie," Henderson said, rubbing his temples. "The police have your phone. They have the texts to your boyfriend. Gonna boot her to coach." Champagne is chilling. That proves premeditation. That turns a mistake into a crime. You aren't facing a slap on the wrist. You are looking at felony charges. The media war. While Stephanie sat in jail, her boyfriend, Mike, had been released on bail. Being a coward, he immediately went to a tabloid website, the Daily Buzz, to sell his side of the story for $5,000. The headline ran an hour later. Exclusive. She was aggressive. Flight attendant's boyfriend claims billionaire's daughter started the fight. In the interview, Mike claimed Maya had been throwing things and screaming profanities before the video started. He tried to paint Stephanie as a hero, trying to maintain order. It was a desperate, malicious lie, and it lasted exactly 45 minutes, because David Sterling didn't just play defense, he played offense. From his hotel suite at the Ritz Paris, David authorized the release of the cabin security footage. Unlike most airlines where cameras only record the cockpit door, Zenith's new first-class suites had safety monitoring cameras. The video was released on Zenith's official Twitter account with the caption, "The truth matters." The footage was silent, but crystal clear. It showed Maya sitting quietly reading. It showed Stephanie looming over her. It showed Stephanie snatching the phone. It showed Maya terrified, shrinking back. It showed Stephanie grabbing Maya's arm while Maya was sitting down. It showed Mike sneaking into the cabin and hiding with a glass of champagne. The internet detectives went to work. They synced the security footage with Mrs. Gable's audio. The result was a damning, frame-by-frame dismantling of Mike's lies. By the evening, the Daily Buzz had deleted the article and issued an apology. Mike was doxxed. His employer, a local gym where he worked as a trainer, fired him publicly on Facebook. Maya sat on the balcony of the hotel, watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle. She held her phone, scrolling through the support. Thousands of art students, black travelers and young women were posting pictures of themselves in hoodies with the caption, "I stand with Maya." "You okay?" David asked, stepping out onto the balcony with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "They're drawing me," Maya said, showing him a piece of digital art someone had made, a superhero version of her breaking out of handcuffs. "You are a hero to them," David said. "You stood your ground." "I didn't feel like a hero," Maya whispered. "I felt small." "That's why it matters," David said. "Because you showed them that even when they try to make you small, the truth is bigger." David sat down. "The lawyers are asking what you want to do. We can settle. Stephanie will plead out, do probation, or we can push for trial." Maya looked at her wrists. The red marks were fading, but they were still there. She knew what she was doing, Dad. She planned it. If it wasn't me, if it was someone who didn't have you for a father, what would have happened? David's face darkened. They would be in jail right now, charged with assaulting a flight crew. "Exactly," Maya said. "So we can't settle. She needs to stand in front of a judge. She needs to say what she did out loud." 3 months later, the Queens County Criminal Court was packed. It wasn't the trial of the century, but in the court of public opinion, it was the main event. Stephanie Vance sat at the defense table. She looked different. The blonde helmet of hair was gone, replaced by a modest, darker ponytail. She wore a cheap grey suit. She looked thinner, haggard. The internet had been cruel to her, but the legal system was about to be crueler. She was charged with 1. Unlawful imprisonment in the 2nd degree, 2. Assault in the 3rd degree, 3. Falsifying business records, the manifest, 4. Conspiracy to commit fraud. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Alana Brooks, was not holding back. She wanted to make an example of Stephanie. This was about more than one flight. It was about the culture of entitlement and bias. The testimony. When Maya took the stand, the room went silent. She wore a black blazer and her signature sneakers. She spoke softly, but clearly. "She told me I didn't belong," Maya told the jury. "She didn't look at my ticket. She looked at my skin and my clothes." "And how did that make you feel?" D.A. Brooks asked. "Like I was a criminal," Maya said. "I was just going to Paris to draw. But in her eyes, I was a threat." Stephanie's lawyer tried to cross-examine her, suggesting that Maya had been disrespectful or slow to comply. "Objection," D.A. Brooks snapped. "Being slow to comply with an unlawful order is not a crime. It is a right." "Sustained," the judge ruled. Then came the smoking gun, the text messages. D.A. Brooks projected them onto the screen. "Stephanie, it's done. Little brat is cuffed. Come get your seat, baby. Mike, you're the best. Champagne time." The jury looked at Stephanie. She looked down at her hands. There was no stress in those texts. There was only glee, malice, the verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. "We find the defendant, Stephanie Vance, guilty on all counts." Stephanie closed her eyes. A sob escaped her throat. The judge, the Honourable Justice Thorne, was not known for leniency. He peered over his glasses at Stephanie. "Ms. Vance, you were in a position of authority. You were responsible for the safety of hundreds of people. Instead, You weaponized that authority to terrorize a 17-year-old girl, simply to steal a luxury for your boyfriend. It was an act of profound selfishness and bigotry. Stephanie stood up, shaking. Your Honor, please. I've lost my job. I've lost my home. The internet hates me. Isn't that enough punishment? Public opinion is not the law, Justice Thorne said. You committed a crime, and you will pay the price. The sentence: 18 months in state prison, 3 years probation upon release, restitution to the victim. Stephanie screamed as the bailiff moved to handcuff her. This time the cuffs were real steel, not plastic zip ties. And this time there was no rich father to come save her. As she was led away, she looked back at the gallery. She saw Mike. He didn't look at her. He was already typing on his phone, probably trying to sell another story. She saw David Sterling. He looked at her with zero emotion. And she saw Maya. Maya didn't look triumphant. She just looked done. The civil suit and the karma. The criminal trial was over, but David Sterling wasn't finished. He sued Stephanie and Mike in civil court for emotional distress and damages. Since neither of them had money, the judgment was largely symbolic, until the discovery phase revealed that Mike had been selling stolen airline amenities, liquor, blankets, headphones, on eBay for years, supplied by Stephanie. This triggered a federal investigation into theft across the airline. Stephanie faced another 5 years for federal theft charges. The hole she had dug was bottomless, the aftermath for the crew. Kyle Benson, the young flight attendant who had tried to help, was now the face of Zenith's rebranding. He was featured in their commercials. David Sterling personally mentored him, paying for his business school tuition. Kyle was on track to move into corporate operations. Captain Graves was forced into early retirement. He kept his pension, but he was stripped of his flying license for negligence. He spent his days arguing on aviation forums, claiming he was a victim of woke culture. But nobody listened. Greg Miller, the laughing man, never recovered his career. A simple Google search of his name brought up the video of him laughing at a crying child. He ended up moving to a different state, changing his name, and working a mid-level sales job for a fraction of his old salary. The conclusion of the arc, 6 months after the trial, Maya was back at JFK. She was heading to Tokyo this time. She wore a hoodie. She wore her headphones. She walked to the gate. "Welcome back, Miss Sterling," the gate agent beamed. Maya smiled. "Thanks." She boarded the plane. She turned left into first class. Seat 1A was waiting, but on the headrest there was a small, embroidered detail that hadn't been there before. Zenith Airways had updated their interiors. On the headrest of 1A, in small gold stitching, it read, "Respect." It was a small gesture, ordered by the CEO. A reminder to every crew member and every passenger who sat there. Maya sat down. She opened her sketchbook. She drew a pair of hands. But they weren't in cuffs. They were wings. She was free. The story of Flight 402 didn't just end with a prison sentence or a viral hashtag. Its impact rippled through the aviation industry for years. David Sterling, leveraging his position as chairman, didn't stop at firing Stephanie. He overhauled the entire Zenith Airways training manual. He implemented mandatory bias training that wasn't just a boring video, but a rigorous, scenario-based curriculum that every employee, from baggage handlers to pilots, had to pass. He also established the Sterling Aviation Scholarship for underrepresented youth in aviation. The first recipient was a young girl from the Bronx named Chloe, who had dreams of being a pilot, but had been told she didn't have the look. Maya personally handed her the check at a gala in the very same Zenith lounge where she had once been judged. Maya herself never stopped drawing. Her sketchbook from that day, filled with the raw emotions of her trauma, became the basis for her first solo art exhibition in Paris. Unbound. The centerpiece was a charcoal drawing of a pair of cut plastic cuffs lying on the floor of a plane, with a shadow of a father standing over them. It sold for $50,000, all of which she donated to legal defense funds for wrongfully detained travelers. As for Stephanie Vance, prison was not kind, but it was clarifying. She wrote a letter to Maya 2 years into her sentence. It wasn't a request for forgiveness. She knew she didn't deserve that. It was an admission. "I thought power was making people feel small," she wrote. "I didn't realize it just made me tiny." Maya read it, refolded it, and put it away. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She was too busy flying. In a world quick to judge by appearances, Maya Sterling's story is a powerful reminder that prejudice is not just cruel, it is a costly mistake. Stephanie Vance saw a hoodie and assumed threat, blinding herself to the reality of who she was really dealing with. She lost her career, her freedom, and her reputation because she let bias drive her decisions. But the real hero wasn't just the billionaire father who saved the day. It was Maya, who stood her ground when the world tried to silence her. And it was the community that rallied behind her, proving that while money talks, the truth screams louder. The next time you see someone who doesn't look like they belong in a first-class seat or a boardroom, remember Flight 402. Remember that respect shouldn't be a luxury item, and remember that you never know who is going to walk through that door next. If this story got your heart racing and your blood boiling, hit that like button right now. It helps us expose more stories like this. What would you have done if you were in seat 1A? Would you have stayed quiet or fought back like Maya? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more satisfying stories of instant karma and justice served, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and fly safe.